What if I told you that every conspiracy theory you've ever dismissed, every crazy idea you've laughed at, was actually a carefully crafted lie to hide the most terrifying truth in human history? Tonight, I'm going to share with you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about the people who run our world. A story so disturbing, so unbelievable, that even I struggle to accept it as fact. But the evidence is undeniable. For decades, scientists have dismissed reports of reptilian humanoids as fantasy. Government officials have ridiculed witnesses who claim to see shape-shifting beings in positions of power. The media has branded anyone who dares to speak this truth as delusional conspiracy theorists. But what if? What if the conspiracy theorists were right all along? What if the most powerful people in America, your senators, your governors, your tech billionaires, aren't entirely human? What if their DNA carries something ancient, something cold-blooded, something that's been hiding in plain sight for generations? In 1962, a classified government project called Operation Serpentine began collecting evidence of non-human intelligence operating within our society. The files were buried. The witnesses were silenced. The truth was locked away in basement archives, forgotten by all but a few. Until now. 3 weeks ago, a CDC geneticist named Dr. Chen made a discovery that would cost her everything. She found proof, undeniable, scientific proof, that we are not alone on this planet. And more terrifying still, we never have been. The beings that have been watching us, guiding us, controlling us from the shadows. They don't come from the stars. They come from beneath our feet. And they've been here much longer than we have. Tonight, you're going to learn why Dr. Chen disappeared without a trace. You're going to discover why certain bloodlines have maintained power for centuries. And you're going to understand why your own DNA might not be as human as you think. This is episode 1 of the Reptilian Files, a 5-part investigation into the most dangerous secret ever uncovered. A secret that threatens not just individual lives, but the future of human consciousness itself. I warn you now, once you hear this story, there's no going back. You'll start noticing things, patterns, signs. You'll begin to see the truth that's been hidden in plain sight your entire life. Are you ready to discover what's really crawling beneath the surface of American power? Are you prepared to learn why they call it cold-blooded politics? Music fades to atmospheric background. Then let's begin with the night Dr. Chen's world changed forever. Dr. Chen had always been skeptical of conspiracy theories. As a geneticist working for the CDC in Atlanta, she dealt in facts, data, and peer-reviewed research. So when her colleague Marcus burst into her lab at 2 a.m., wild-eyed and clutching a sealed biohazard container, she assumed he'd finally cracked under the pressure of their latest project. "Sarah, you need to see this," Marcus whispered, his hands trembling as he set the container on her workbench. "I found it in the basement archives. It's been there for decades." The container bore a label that made Sarah's blood run cold. Project Serpentine, classified. Do not open without level 7 clearance. "Marcus, where exactly did you find this? And why are you bringing it to me at?" "Look at the date," he interrupted, pointing to a faded stamp on the side. 1962. This predates our entire genetic sequencing program by 40 years. Sarah's curiosity overcame her caution. As she carefully opened the container under the biosafety hood, she found dozens of tissue samples preserved in some kind of advanced cryogenic fluid she didn't recognize. But it was the accompanying documentation that made her heart race. The files described experiments conducted on what the documents referred to as non-human intelligence specimens captured during various military operations. The genetic analysis, somehow far more advanced than anything she'd seen even today, revealed cellular structures that were unmistakably reptilian, yet incorporated human DNA in ways that should have been impossible. "This can't be real," Sarah muttered, but as she loaded one of the samples into her sequencing machine, the results that appeared on her screen defied everything she knew about biology. The DNA showed markers for both cold-blooded and warm-blooded metabolism, scales that could somehow appear as human skin, and most disturbing of all, brain tissue samples that suggested intelligence far beyond human capability. As she delved deeper into the files, Sarah discovered photographs. Grainy, black and white images that showed humanoid figures with distinctly reptilian features, elongated skulls, vertical pupils, and skin that seemed to shimmer between human flesh and something else entirely. But the most chilling discovery came in the form of a list. Hundreds of names with corresponding locations and dates. Names she recognized. Politicians, celebrities, business leaders, all marked with a single ominous notation: integrated. The lab's security system suddenly activated, bathing the room in red emergency lighting. Through the intercom, a calm, professional voice announced, "Dr. Chen, please step away from the workstation and remain where you are. Security personnel are en route to assist you." Sarah grabbed her phone to call Marcus, but the line was dead. In fact, all the lines were dead. As she looked out the lab's reinforced window, she saw black SUVs surrounding the building. That's when she noticed something that made her blood freeze. The security guard approaching her lab wasn't walking normally. His movement was too smooth, too calculated. And when he looked up at her through the window, she saw his eyes briefly flash with an unmistakable vertical pupil before returning to normal. The documents scattered across her desk suddenly made terrible sense. This wasn't just a conspiracy theory. This was a cover-up that had been going on for decades, and she had just stumbled into the middle of it. As the lab door's electronic locks disengaged, Sarah realized she had seconds to act. She quickly uploaded the genetic data to a secure cloud server and sent an encrypted message to every contact in her phone. "If something happens to me, look for Project Serpentine. The truth is in the DNA." The door opened, and 3 figures in hazmat suits entered. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, unnaturally so. When the lead figure spoke, Sarah noticed something that would haunt her forever. The voice was perfectly human, but behind the face mask, she could see the faint outline of scales. "Dr. Chen, we need to discuss your recent research. Please come with us." As they escorted her from the lab, Sarah caught a glimpse of her reflection in the biosafety hood's glass surface. For just a moment, she could have sworn she saw her own eyes flash with something inhuman. The genetic samples she'd been handling. What exactly had she exposed herself to? The last thing she remembered before everything went black was the realization that the conspiracy wasn't just about hiding the existence of reptilian beings. It was about something far worse, the systematic replacement of human leadership with something else entirely. And she might have just become part of it. 3 weeks after Dr. Sarah Chen's disappearance, investigative journalist Jake Morrison received an encrypted email that would change everything he thought he knew about reality. The message contained a single line: "Sarah Chen tried to warn you. The serpents are everywhere. Look deeper." Attached were dozens of genetic sequencing files and photographs that seemed impossible, clear evidence of reptilian-human hybrid DNA and what appeared to be shape-shifting capabilities in living tissue samples. Jake had built his career on exposing government corruption, but this was beyond anything he'd ever encountered. The files showed a genetic modification program that had been running since the 1940s, with test subjects that included some of the most powerful people in American politics and business. His investigation led him to a former CDC employee named Marcus Kellerman, who agreed to meet him at a diner outside Roswell, New Mexico. Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, constantly glancing over his shoulder as he spoke in hushed tones. "They took Sarah 3 weeks ago," Marcus whispered. "But before they got to her, she managed to transmit some of the data. What she found goes back generations, Jake. This isn't just about replacing people, it's about breeding programs." Marcus pulled out a tablet and showed Jake genealogical charts that traced bloodlines of prominent American families back centuries. Every major political dynasty, every influential business empire, every entertainment mogul. They all shared common genetic markers that appeared nowhere else in the human population. The Roosevelts, the Kennedys, the Rockefellers. Look at this data. They all carry traces of non-human DNA. But it's not just the old families. Look at these recent acquisitions. The screen showed recent genetic profiles of tech billionaires, social media moguls, and emerging political figures. The same markers, but stronger, more pronounced. They're not just infiltrating, Jake realized, his blood running cold. They're evolving. Marcus nodded grimly. And the scary part? Some of them might not even know what they are. The genetic modifications can remain dormant for generations, then activate under specific environmental triggers. Jake's phone buzzed with a news alert. Another prominent politician had announced their presidential candidacy, and something about their statement felt off. The language was too perfect, too calculated, lacking the typical human imperfections of natural speech. How do we know who's who? Jake asked. Marcus showed him a thermal imaging app on his phone. Body temperature. Reptilian genetics mean their core temperature runs about 3 degrees cooler than normal humans. It's subtle but consistent. They spent the next hour reviewing footage of congressional hearings, Supreme Court sessions, and corporate board meetings. The patterns were undeniable. Dozens of influential figures showed the telltale lower body temperature signatures. But their investigation was interrupted when Marcus suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to leave. Now." Through the diner's window, Jake could see a convoy of black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. But what made his blood freeze wasn't the vehicles. It was the way the occupants moved as they emerged. Too fluid, too coordinated, like a hive mind operating multiple bodies. As they fled through the diner's back exit, Marcus pressed a USB drive into Jake's hand. Everything Sarah discovered is on there. The breeding programs, the genetic triggers, the replacement schedules, it's all documented. Replacement schedules? Jake asked as they ran toward his car. They're accelerating the program. Within the next 5 years, they plan to have reptilian hybrids in every major position of power in America. And Jake, the trigger event that activates dormant genetics in the population, it's already been deployed. Jake's hands shook as he started the engine. What kind of trigger? Remember the mass vaccination programs over the past few years? The genetic modifications weren't just in the vaccines. They were designed to interact with existing reptilian DNA markers in the population. Millions of Americans may be carrying dormant reptilian genetics right now, waiting for the next phase of activation. As they sped away from the diner, Jake noticed something in his rearview mirror that made his heart stop. The pursuing vehicles weren't following normal traffic patterns. They were moving in perfect formation, taking turns and changing lanes with supernatural precision, as if controlled by a single intelligence. Marcus was checking something on his tablet when he suddenly went pale. "Jake, we have a bigger problem. According to Sarah's research, the activation process isn't random. It's targeted. They've been using social media algorithms, DNA ancestry services, and medical databases to identify individuals with the highest concentration of dormant reptilian markers. And your name is on the list. High priority activation target." Jake felt a strange tingling sensation at the base of his skull, and for a moment, his vision seemed to sharpen in ways that felt distinctly non-human. The conspiracy wasn't just about exposing shapeshifters in positions of power. It was about discovering that humanity itself had been systematically altered, and the transformation was already beginning. The strange sensations Jake Morrison had been experiencing were getting worse. Over the past 2 weeks, since fleeing the diner with Marcus, he'd noticed changes that defied explanation. His eyesight had become unnaturally sharp, especially in low light. He could hear conversations through walls. Most disturbing of all, he'd started having dreams, vivid, ancient memories that weren't his own. In these dreams, he saw vast underground cities populated by beings that moved between human and reptilian forms at will. He witnessed the signing of the Declaration of Independence, but in his visions, half the founding fathers bore the telltale signs of reptilian heritage. Vertical pupils that flashed in candlelight, skin that shimmered like scales. The USB drive Marcus had given him contained terabytes of classified information about Project Serpentine, and the more Jake analyzed it, the more horrifying the scope became. The program hadn't started in the 1940s as he'd initially thought. It went back to the very founding of America. The documents revealed that the reptilian species had been on Earth far longer than humans, living in vast subterranean networks that stretched beneath every major continent. Rather than conquer humanity outright, they had chosen a more insidious approach, gradual genetic integration over centuries. What made Jake's blood run cold was a particular file labeled Activation Protocols. The document detailed how dormant reptilian DNA could be triggered through specific electromagnetic frequencies, chemical compounds, or extreme stress. And according to the timeline, the mass activation phase had begun 6 months ago. Jake's investigation led him to Dr. Elena Vasquez, a neurogeneticist who had worked on classified projects before going into hiding. They met in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York City. One of the few places her electromagnetic scanners indicated was free from reptilian surveillance. "You're experiencing the awakening," Dr. Vasquez told him after reviewing his symptoms. "The reptilian DNA in your system is activating. Based on your genetic markers, I'd estimate you're about 30% reptilian heritage, probably going back 5 or 6 generations." "That's impossible," Jake protested. But even as he spoke, he could feel his canine teeth elongating slightly, a change that had been happening more frequently over the past few days. Dr. Vasquez showed him brain scans on her tablet. "This is a normal human brain pattern. This is yours from last week." The differences were striking. Jake's neural activity showed patterns that were far more complex, with sections of his brain that appeared to be evolving in real time. "The reptilian brain architecture is vastly superior to human cognition," she explained. "Enhanced pattern recognition, perfect memory retention, ability to process multiple complex scenarios simultaneously. But it comes with changes in empathy, emotional response, and social bonding." Jake thought about the past few weeks. He had been making connections in his investigation with superhuman efficiency, but he'd also noticed that the suffering of others affected him less. The human capacity for emotional connection was fading, replaced by cold, calculating logic. "How many people are going through this transformation?" he asked. "Based on the genetic data, approximately 15% of the American population carries significant reptilian markers. Most of them don't know it yet, but as the activation frequencies intensify, they'll begin changing. The timeline suggests full activation for high-priority individuals within the next 3 months." Dr. Vasquez led him deeper into the tunnel system, revealing a hidden facility where other awakening individuals had gathered. Jake was shocked to see people he recognized: a former senator, a tech company CEO, a prominent news anchor. All showed the same signs of reptilian transformation: enhanced physical capabilities, changing eye structure, and an unsettling lack of emotional expression. "We call ourselves the Resistance," Dr. Vasquez explained. "But that's not entirely accurate. We're not fighting the reptilian agenda. We're trying to understand our place in it. Some of us believe we can maintain our humanity while embracing our reptilian heritage. Others think we should accelerate the transformation and join the dominant species." The group was split between 2 factions. The purists wanted to find a way to reverse the genetic activation and remain human. The evolutionists believed that humanity's time was over and that embracing reptilian consciousness was the next step in evolution. Jake found himself torn between the 2 philosophies, especially when Dr. Vasquez showed him classified footage of reptilian cities deep beneath major American urban centers. The technology was millennia beyond human capability: clean energy, advanced transportation systems, medical techniques that could extend life for centuries. "They're not invaders," she explained. "They're the original inhabitants. Humans are the newcomers, and now they're offering us a choice: evolve with them or be gradually replaced by those who will." That night, Jake experienced his most vivid dream yet. He was in what appeared to be the Oval Office, but the president sitting behind the desk had fully reptilian features. Around the room, advisors shifted seamlessly between human and reptilian forms as they discussed the final phase of integration. When he woke, Jake realized the dream wasn't a vision of the future. It was a memory from the reptilian collective consciousness he was now connected to. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental and spiritual. He was becoming part of something vast and ancient, a hive mind that had been guiding human civilization for centuries. The most terrifying realization was that he was starting to see the logic in their plan. Human civilization was destroying the planet, constantly at war, driven by emotions and irrationality. The reptilian approach was efficient, sustainable, and logical. As Jake felt his humanity slipping away piece by piece, he had to ask himself, was he fighting to save humanity? Or was he simply resisting evolution itself? The answer would determine not just his fate, but the future of both species. Jake Morrison stood before the massive underground chamber, his newly enhanced vision taking in details that would have been invisible to human eyes just weeks earlier. The reptilian city beneath Washington, D.C. stretched for miles in every direction, its bioluminescent architecture pulsing with an ancient rhythm that seemed to synchronize with his own heartbeat. Dr. Vasquez had brought him here to meet the council, the reptilian leadership that had been guiding human civilization from the shadows for over 4,000 years. As they descended deeper into the complex, Jake's transformed consciousness began accessing memories that weren't his own, collective experiences of a species that had watched empires rise and fall like seasons. Your awakening is proceeding faster than most, Dr. Vasquez observed as Jake navigated the crystalline corridors with instinctive familiarity. The journalist's mind, always seeking truth, adapts more quickly to our expanded awareness. The council chamber was a vast sphere carved from what appeared to be living rock, its walls displaying real-time information from across the globe. Stock markets, military movements, social media trends, genetic activation statistics. Jake realized he was looking at a planetary management system that had been operating for millennia. 3 beings awaited them, their forms shifting fluidly between human and reptilian appearance. The central figure, tall, dignified, with eyes that held the weight of centuries, stepped forward. "Welcome, Jake Morrison. I am Counselor Zeth. We've been monitoring your investigation with great interest." Jake's reptilian consciousness translated the being's communication, which occurred on multiple levels simultaneously: verbal speech, electromagnetic patterns, and direct neural transmission. The experience was overwhelming and exhilarating. "You've been manipulating human civilization for thousands of years," Jake said, though he was surprised to find his accusation lacked the anger he expected to feel. "Guiding, not manipulating," Counselor Zeth corrected. "Your species showed promise, but lacked the neurological architecture for long-term survival. Left to your own devices, humans would have destroyed themselves and this planet within centuries. We offered partnership instead of extinction." The chamber's walls began displaying historical scenes, the construction of ancient monuments with technology far beyond their supposed time periods, secret meetings between reptilian advisors and human leaders throughout history, the gradual introduction of reptilian genetics into human bloodlines. Every major advancement in human civilization, agriculture, writing, government, technology, was guided by our influence. We didn't conquer your species, we elevated it. Jake watched scenes of the American Revolution, the Civil War, both world wars, all orchestrated to gradually consolidate power in the hands of those with reptilian heritage while eliminating purely human genetic lines that showed resistance to integration. The founding fathers, the great industrialists, the tech pioneers, they all carried our genetics? Jake asked. "Not all," another counselor replied, "but enough to ensure progress toward inevitable integration. What you call democracy was designed as a testing ground, a way to identify which human genetic lines could adapt to our consciousness and which could not." The most shocking revelation came when the walls displayed current global statistics. The reptilian activation process wasn't limited to America. It was happening worldwide, with different rates of integration based on regional genetic compatibility. "Phase 4 of the integration is beginning," Counselor Zeth explained. "Within 18 months, approximately 40% of world leaders will have completed their transformation. The remainder will be replaced." Jake saw footage of recent political changes around the world through new eyes. Leaders who had seemed to undergo dramatic personality shifts, policy reversals that defied explanation, international conflicts that resolved with supernatural efficiency, all evidence of the reptilian consciousness taking control of human governments. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Your investigation, Jake, was not an accident. We guided you to discover Project Serpentine. We ensured Marcus would find those files. We orchestrated your awakening because we needed someone with your skills and genetic compatibility to serve as a bridge between the human population and our species. The chamber displayed Jake's own genealogy, revealing reptilian markers stretching back 12 generations. His family's history of journalism, their uncanny ability to uncover hidden truths, their influence in shaping public opinion, all part of a breeding program designed to create the perfect messenger. You're offering me a choice, Jake realized. No, Counselor Zeth said softly. The choice was made for you generations ago. We're offering you understanding. You can serve as humanity's advocate in the transition, helping to minimize suffering as the old human consciousness gives way to our integrated species. Or you can resist and watch as the transition happens without input from the human perspective. Jake felt the last vestiges of his human emotional responses fighting against the cold logic of his reptilian consciousness. He thought about the billions of people who had no idea their entire species was being gradually absorbed into something else. What about free will? What about the right to choose our own evolution? What about the right of the planet to survive human destructiveness? Counselor Zeth countered. What about the right of your children to inherit a world that isn't dying from human short-sightedness? We're not ending humanity. We're saving it by making it part of something greater. The chamber walls displayed environmental data, nuclear weapon statistics, resource depletion projections, all painting a picture of a species racing towards self-destruction. Jake realized the horrible truth. The reptilian plan wasn't evil. It might be the only hope for survival, but it meant the end of humanity as he had known it, replaced by something that was undeniably superior, but fundamentally different. As his transformation neared completion, Jake Morrison faced the ultimate question. Would he use his remaining humanity to warn the world about what was coming? Or would he embrace his reptilian consciousness and help guide the transition? The answer would determine not just his own fate, but whether the human species would go gently into that good night or fight desperately against the dying of their own light. Time was running out, and the world was waiting for his decision. Jake Morrison stood at the window of his New York apartment, watching the city below with eyes that now saw far more than they ever had as a human. 3 months had passed since his meeting with the council, and the world had changed in ways that only those with reptilian consciousness could fully perceive. The integration was accelerating. Political upheavals that seemed chaotic to human observers followed perfectly logical patterns when viewed through reptilian strategy. Economic markets responded to influences that existed far below human awareness. Social movements rose and fell according to the precise calculations of a species that thought in terms of millennia rather than election cycles. Jake's own transformation was now complete. He could shift between human and reptilian forms at will, though maintaining human appearance required conscious effort. His cognitive abilities had increased exponentially. He could process vast amounts of information simultaneously, predict human behavior with mathematical precision, and access the collective memories of his reptilian ancestors stretching back thousands of years. But with each passing day, he felt his connection to humanity fading. The knock on his door came at exactly 11:47 p.m., just as his enhanced precognitive abilities had predicted. Marcus Kellerman stood in the hallway, but Jake's thermal vision immediately revealed the truth. Marcus's body temperature had dropped to reptilian levels. Another activation, another human consciousness absorbed into the collective. "Hello, Jake," Marcus said, his voice carrying the subtle harmonic frequencies that marked advanced reptilian communication. "The council has sent me to discuss your assignment." Jake let him in, noting the perfect efficiency of Marcus's movements. The hesitation, the nervous energy that had characterized the human Marcus was gone, replaced by the calm precision of reptilian consciousness. "The Revelation broadcasts begin tomorrow," Marcus continued. "Simultaneous transmissions across all major media platforms. The human population will learn the truth about their species' evolution and be given the choice to embrace the transformation or resist it." Jake reviewed the broadcast content through the neural link he now shared with the collective consciousness. It was masterfully crafted, frightening enough to demonstrate the reality of the situation, but logical enough to present integration as the only viable option for survival. "My role is to serve as the human face of the revelation," Jake said, understanding flooding through him, "to make the transformation seem like a choice rather than an inevitability." "Exactly. Your human emotional patterns, though faded, still register authentically to baseline human consciousness. They'll trust you in ways they could never trust us." But Jake felt something stirring within him, a spark of the investigative instinct that had driven his human career. What about those who refuse integration? Marcus's expression didn't change, but Jake perceived the answer through their neural connection. Resistance centers were already being established in remote locations. Humans who refused transformation would be allowed to live out their lives in isolated communities, their population gradually dwindling through natural causes. No mass extermination, simply the patient extinction of a species that had refused evolution. It's the most humane approach possible, Marcus said, responding to Jake's thoughts. We could have chosen conquest, but we chose partnership. Those who cannot adapt will be allowed to fade peacefully. That night, Jake experienced what would be his final dream as a being with human consciousness. He saw his sister Emma, still fully human, still unaware of the changes happening around her. In the dream, she was running through a forest, pursued by shadows that took the form of everyone she had ever trusted, all transformed, all calling for her to stop running and join them. When he woke, Jake made a decision that surprised even his reptilian consciousness. The broadcast went live at noon Eastern Time. Every television, computer, and smartphone on Earth simultaneously displayed the same feed. Jake Morrison, looking perfectly human, sitting in a professional news studio. Good afternoon. My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm here to tell you the truth about the future of our species. What followed was a carefully scripted revelation designed by reptilian psychologists to minimize panic while maximizing acceptance. Jake explained the ancient presence of the reptilian species, their role in guiding human development, and the current integration process. He showed genetic evidence, historical documentation, and projections of Earth's future under reptilian guidance versus continued human leadership. But as Jake spoke, something unexpected happened. The human consciousness he thought he had lost began reasserting itself. Small deviations from the script, subtle warnings embedded in his presentation, coded messages that only the most perceptive human viewers would understand. The choice is yours, Jake said, looking directly into the camera. But remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of what you were to become what you need to be. And sometimes, the greatest act of courage is refusing to let go at all. The Reptilian Council monitoring the broadcast immediately recognized Jake's deviation from the approved script. Emergency protocols activated as they realized one of their most important assets was experiencing an unprecedented reversal of integration. In living rooms across America, humans watched in growing confusion and fear as Jake Morrison began to physically transform on live television. His human features shifted, revealing the reptilian characteristics beneath. But instead of the calm transition they had planned to demonstrate, this transformation seemed to be fought at every stage. The integration is irreversible for most, Jake said, his voice shifting between human and reptilian tones. But not for everyone. Some of us can still choose. Some of us can still fight. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice to remain human? The broadcast signal cut to static as reptilian security forces stormed the studio. But Jake's final message had been transmitted. Across the globe, humans with dormant reptilian genetics felt a stirring in their consciousness, not toward integration, but toward resistance. The revelation had been intended to mark the beginning of willing human submission to reptilian guidance. Instead, it became the opening shot of a war for the future of human consciousness itself. Jake Morrison, caught between two species and two forms of consciousness, had made his choice. The question now was whether humanity would make theirs, and whether it was already too late for choice to matter. In hidden facilities around the world, both reptilian integration centers and human resistance movements prepared for a conflict that would determine the evolutionary fate of two species. The age of coexistence was ending. The age of decision had begun, and in the depths of his transformed mind, Jake Morrison wondered if he had saved humanity or doomed it to a war it could never win. And so, Dr. Sarah Chen vanished into the shadows of a conspiracy far more ancient and terrifying than she could have ever imagined. But her disappearance was just the beginning. The genetic samples she analyzed, the files she uploaded to that cloud server, the encrypted message she sent to every contact in her phone, they didn't just disappear with her. Someone received them, Someone who would soon discover that the rabbit hole goes much, much deeper than a simple government cover-up. Because what Sarah found in that basement laboratory wasn't just evidence of reptilian beings living among us. It was proof of something far more disturbing. A systematic program of genetic manipulation that has been reshaping humanity for generations. In episode 2, we'll follow investigative journalist Jake Morrison as he receives Sarah's final transmission and begins to uncover a network of influence that reaches into every corner of American power. You'll learn about the genealogical charts that trace reptilian bloodlines through our most prominent families, the thermal imaging technology that can reveal who's truly human and who's something else, and the breeding programs that have been operating in plain sight for decades. But most terrifying of all, you'll discover why Jake Morrison's own name appears on a classified list, marked as a high-priority activation target. What does that mean? What is the activation they're referring to? And why are millions of Americans walking around right now carrying dormant genetic markers that could transform them into something inhuman at any moment? The answers will shock you. They will change how you look at everyone around you, and they will make you question whether the person staring back at you in the mirror is entirely human. Next week, we dive deeper into the network. Episode 2 of the Reptilian Files. You'll see classified footage of congressional hearings where body temperature anomalies reveal the impossible truth. You'll learn about the social media algorithms designed to identify genetic targets. And you'll witness the moment when Jake Morrison realizes that he might already be becoming part of the very conspiracy he's trying to expose. But I have to warn you, after episode 2, there's no turning back. Once you see the patterns, once you understand the scope of this infiltration, you'll start noticing the signs everywhere. In your workplace, in your government, maybe even in your own family. Are you prepared to learn how deep this goes? Can you handle discovering that humanity's evolution has been hijacked by an intelligence far older and more calculating than our own? The truth is waiting for you in episode 2. The question is, are you ready for it? If this story sent chills down your spine and left you questioning everything you thought you knew about our world, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next, and don't forget to leave a comment telling me what you think really happened to Dr. Sarah Chen. Until next week, keep watching the shadows. You never know what might be watching back.